I'm John Chowning with Campbellsville University for Dialogue on Public Issues. Today we're continuing in our segment and series of interviews with candidates for statewide office subject to the November 5th election. As always, we're encouraging the voters of Campbellsville, Taylor County, and the surrounding areas of Southern Kentucky to study the issues, look at the candidates, and make informed choices. Very pleased today to be interviewing Robert Conway, the Democratic nominee for Kentucky Commissioner of Agriculture. Mr. Conway, welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background.
Well, I'm truly an 8th generation Kentucky farmer. My great-grandfather literally came to Kentucky with Daniel Boone in 1775. My farm has been in my family since 1780. My wife's farm has been in her family since 1870. Have 4 sons, the youngest of which is actually farming with me, and it makes him the 9th generation. There's no more than that. But he's probably one of the reasons why I decided to run. I'm a retired executive of GE Capital, which is the finance arm for General Electric. Farming was something that I always wanted to do. My father passed away young. The farm was passed down to me. From my grandfather, my farming history actually was associated with my papaw. But at the end of the day, my youngest son came to me 3 years ago. He graduated with a degree. He played football at the University of Louisville when they won the Sugar Bowl. But when their coach left and went to Texas, he transferred to UK and got a degree in ag with the intention of moving on and going to vet school. But he came to me about 3 years ago and said, "Dad, I would love just to farm." Part of me was excited because we were able to keep that tradition going. The other part of me was very fearful because you cannot make it on the farm today. And now I have a 27-year-old wonderful young man living at home, doesn't own a car, doesn't own a truck, drives the farm truck, and he's working 3 jobs right now so he can afford to farm. I myself, retired, have had to go back to work so I can afford to farm, so I can relate to your average farmer in Kentucky. And the fact that we have been there and have done this for so long, it's our history. It's not just my history, it's everyone's history. It's Kentucky history. And I think it's very important, so I basically decided to run to try to help save the family farms.
That's quite a legacy, and appreciate your sharing that with us. You've partially answered this, but specifically, why did you decide to become a candidate for Commissioner of Agriculture in 2019, this particular election cycle?
You know, when you sit around the service station and you have drink Cokes and coffee with all your friends and farmers who are retired and stuff, and you hear the stories, and I know how hard it is for me personally, that it's easy to sit back and complain. And I decided that maybe for once, to take the initiative. I was a former member, 12-year member, and chairman of the Scott County Board of Education. I retired. I'm on the Scott County Soil and Water Conservation Board currently. I hear the stories from them. I had the time. It's something I would not say that was something I always wanted to do. What I wanted to do was farm. And I can just tell you right now, the economics in farming right today are terrible. When I initially got into this, it was about trying to help save the family farm. Well, now it's more about trying to save all farms because all farms are in trouble today. And if we don't discuss this now, 4 years from now, 8 years from now, it's too late.
What, from your understanding of the duties of the Kentucky Commissioner of Agriculture, and I think a fair question in election for a position like this, where in the majority of the states, the position is an appointive position. Why do you think it should remain? Obviously, it's a constitutional office, so it is an elective office in Kentucky. Is that the way it should be?
I'm not quite sure it is, to be honest with you. I've sat back and thought about it. It should not be about money. And unfortunately, politics, a lot of it has to do with money. You know, I'm running what I would refer to as a grassroots campaign, literally. The gentleman that's the current Commissioner of Agriculture, I refuse to say anything ill about. But at the end of the day, he does have a desire to promote himself within his party into other elevated political offices. That is a known fact. I don't want to do anything personally other than be Commissioner of Agriculture because I want to help people. To be very honest about it, money is a major factor when it comes to politics. He has over $500,000. I know for a fact last Wednesday he wrote a check for $370,000 for TV ads across the state of Kentucky. I am refusing to take any corporate money. I know he has. He's taken money from Monsanto and Kentucky Farm Bureau, and it goes on from there. I have only accepted money from individuals and labor unions which represent individuals. And to my own detriment, it does not allow me to do the things I would like to do. But at the end of the day, with a in my opinion, a groundswell movement, because I have a tremendous amount of people wanting to help me right now, because I'm truly motivated by trying to do the right thing to help people stay on the farms. I've had people come up to me since I've been running for office, and to be very honest about it, when I got into this, it was never about winning. I did not even think I would win the primary. It was about the message. It was about getting out there that Kentucky farms and Kentucky farm families are in serious trouble. We're losing 1,000 farms a year right now, and people are just now starting to talk about it. 2007, we had 87,500 farms. We have 75,000 farms now. 57% of those. So you're looking at 57% of 75,000 is 37,000 farms in the state of Kentucky have gross revenue, not profit, but revenue of less than $10,000. And people wonder why farms are for sale. So we have to do something now, not tomorrow, not down the road. We have to do something now to change the economics of farming. And I think, to answer your question, and this is a long way around it, I'm not quite sure that this office to me is so important to so many people in the state of Kentucky that it should be a political office. I think it shouldn't be political.
What do you think are the primary duties of the office? I mean, obviously, to be
Well,
an
there's all
advocate and a
kinds
voice
of,
for the farmers.
In Kentucky, the Commissioner of Agriculture is relegated from everything to being the point person in charge to make sure that when you buy a gallon of gas at the service station, you get a gallon of gas, to the quality of foods, to establish farm policy. To me, the farm policy is probably as important in the distribution of funds. Another thing that I have found out since I started running for this, and I did not know this, was that the Kentucky Department of Agriculture is responsible for the overseeing of animal shelters throughout the state of Kentucky. Now, you never hear this commissioner or you never hear this department at this time talk about it, but the truth of the matter is, Kentucky, it just came out a couple of weeks ago, Kentucky ranks 50th on how animals are treated within the state of Kentucky. Now, I have dogs and cats on the farm. I love them. Each one have their own personalities. A lot of people love their pets. But I think it says a lot about us, and not to the positive, when Kentucky ranks 50th on the institution and how we treat children and how we treat animals is not a really good statement about who we are as a people. So if that is in fact what the Kentucky General Assembly says, the Kentucky Department of Agriculture is responsible, then I think we need to be responsible. And I can tell you there's been nothing done through that department about that issue in the last 4 years.
Is that an issue that you would tackle, make a priority if you're elected, in terms of more funding, more oversight, more
Absolutely.
intense regulation, whatever it takes?
Absolutely. Keeping people on the farms, making sure animal shelters are viable and do the right thing. Now, it's a tough job. But most everything that has been passed down is not being done. And to me, that's somewhat of a dereliction of duty.
What are some of your ideas? Obviously, you're passionate about the small farmer and farms in general, as you say, and the demise of farming and agriculture in Kentucky. What can the Kentucky Department of Agriculture and the Kentucky Commissioner do to address that problem?
Well, one of the things that I have done is the gentleman that I beat in the primary, an African-American gentleman by the name of Joe Trigg. Joe is from Barron County. He's a farmer in Barron County. He's a 30-year Air Force veteran. Joe is one of the brightest people I've ever met, especially when it comes to farming. Well, I reached back out and we talked after the primary. He was very generous in defeat, and we talked and we have become very good friends. Well, we have actually incorporated a whole group of farmers, a lot of them young farmers, which there are not a lot of, on what can we do to restructure farming so that we can make it in Kentucky. And we've actually came out with a farm plan. It's on my website. It's on Facebook. It's on the political website. We literally have come out with a multi-point plan to try to save farms in Kentucky. You know, going big, like Sonny Perdue said. You know, we had a debate, I guess, for lack of a word. I would call it more of a forum a couple weeks ago at KET, and the current commissioner was talking about how, you know, farming was doing well in Kentucky, and he emphasized dairy farms. And I made a comment to him, good luck on finding a dairy farm in Kentucky anymore. Well, the next day, Sonny Perdue, who is the Secretary of Agriculture, made the statement that small farms couldn't make it, that you either have to get big or get out. Well, we need a paradigm shift. We need to find a way to keep the family farms solvent, viable, because to me they're very important to not only the values earned, the lessons learned on the farm, but they also establish quality of food, they establish the pricing structure, and if we have to rely on corporate farms, I think we're going to be in terrible trouble.
Could you share some of the details of that plan?
I can.
That's been put together,
you know,
just some of the major points.
One of the things that has been touted by the current commissioner, and it is kind of the point of what his 4 years in office is, the resurgent hemp program. Hemp, in my opinion, is a viable entity. It is not the complete answer. It's not going to replace what we had with the tobacco program. I don't think anything is ever going to replace tobacco as we knew it. The Christmas presents bought with tobacco money, the education that was acquired by parents or grandparents working from daylight to dark so their kids could go to college for the first time. Tobacco was tremendous for our state, and I'm not emphasizing, you know, I never smoked, but I understand people that did, and I understand the culture of tobacco farming in Kentucky. And I think we missed that. We've been void in that, and hemp is something that could possibly help us. My concern is right now, basically the sole discretion of the Commissioner of Agriculture. Now, he basically told me I didn't know what I was talking about in our debate, but the truth of the matter is, he said it's by committee. I said, no, you decide who gets to grow it and how much. And he said, well, there's a committee. And I said, well, okay. Well, the truth of the matter is, there is a committee chosen by the Commissioner of Agriculture that he chairs. So he gets to decide who grows hemp and how much. My plan is, and this is not my plan per se, but the committee, and when we're talking over 15 farmers that have come together, is we want what we would refer to as a no tobacco base type program for hemp in Kentucky. If hemp is to be part of the answer, then everyone should share the wealth. Everybody deserves a piece of the pie. Eastern Kentucky, we all know how they're struggling up there.
Right.
The opportunities there are limited. In my opinion, I think Eastern Kentucky has a tremendous future. We just have to tap into it. But the one thing I do know is they know how to grow hemp or marijuana in Eastern Kentucky, in those hillsides and those hollows, and it gives them an opportunity. Every farm would be entitled to a hemp base predicated on the size of the farm. Every farm that has a legal farm number would be eligible. The difference is, going back and looking at the tobacco program, what helped in its demise is you would not be allowed to take it across county borders. You would not be able to lease it. If you raise it, you raise it. If you don't, it sits there. And that makes a difference. The other thing is, one of the things that I'm pushing, that I'm very strong about, is, to me, it's a moral issue, not a political issue, is the legalization of medical marijuana. I am adamant about that, and my personal posture on it is, why would you not want to do something that might help your fellow man?
Would that program require some type of allotment as well?
Yes,
in terms of
that's where I'm going with it. If we legalize medical marijuana in the state of Kentucky, our proposal would be that each farm, once again, each farm could raise an equivalent of 1 acre. Now, that has to be raised in an enclosed setting. You don't want to cross-pollinate. So basically, you're talking about a hoop building, a greenhouse. But 1 acre of medical marijuana generates $40,000 in revenue. And part of that is all predicated on how much you're willing to work. Are you going to outsource the labor, or are you going to do it yourself? And how much more you do yourself is how much more return. But that is one of the things that also, that my problem with agriculture is we must get young people involved in agriculture.
The medical marijuana idea, which has been done in some states up to this point and has had some attention in the gubernatorial race as well as the legislature, General Assembly in past sessions, would require, in addition to the agricultural aspects, some review and oversight from the medical perspective.
It would. Right now, my posture is I want it. I've been on the campaign trail since February the 1st. Since February the 1st, I have put 83,000 miles on my car, and that's for campaign only. I have visited 108 of the 120 counties. And in that time, I've not had one person come up and tell me, Mr. Conway, I disagree with you on your posture on medical marijuana. What I have heard are stories that would break your heart, stories that would make you cry. The benefit to this point far outweighs any of the negatives. I personally, my personal life has been devastated. I lost my mother to cancer. I lost both my grandmothers. I lost a grandfather. I lost 3 aunts, 2 uncles, and I've had cancer. So why would you not want to do something that would help your fellow man? What we don't want is for Big Pharma to get involved. Big Pharma right now has a tendency to take things and then it leaves, it leaves the opportunity to do what it is that it's intended to do.
Are there any studies of best practices in other states that deal with how it's handled from the point of harvesting and processing from the farm to the dispensing of it, medically speaking?
We have.
In between.
We have, and that's one of the things. And I'm going to be very honest with you. I did not know a lot about hemp and marijuana when I got into the race. But I'm one of those people that has an insatiable urge to learn. And what I don't know, I don't mind going and asking.
Right.
So there are actually, of the 15 people that are on this board, 10 of them are raising hemp. And so I default to them for their judgment, and they've actually been in other states and looked. I think one of the states I know they've been to, they went to California. Obviously Colorado. And Colorado in itself is kind of a different beast because you not only have the medical, you also have recreational. We're not going down that path right now. We just want medical marijuana.
Is there revenue potential from the medical marijuana, in the governor's race at least, that has been an issue, and some have proposed some taxation of medicinal marijuana that may be beyond the agriculture department's purview. Is that something you've gotten into?
We've talked about it. I'll be very honest with you. We've talked about it because I think our party that I represent pretty much is for it. I mean, we've talked about it from top to bottom, from the attorney general candidate to the gubernatorial candidate. I think at the end of the day, we're just wanting to help people. And I'm not saying, because I'm not a politician. Understand, I've never run for a political race, let alone a partisan race, let alone a statewide race. I just want to do what I think would help people.
On the hemp issue, it seems that the CBD oil, there's a big market for that, and claims that it would solve every health issue on the table, everything conceivable, a cure-all for everything. Do we need some research in that vein? And then there's the other side of the bulk use, or the actual plant itself, I suppose. We could call it, I'm not sure I'm using the right term. But,
but I know what you're talking. You can never have too much research. But also have to understand the caveat that a lot of times research is usually pointed in a particular direction looking for a particular outcome. Anything in life can be justified. Any decision in life can be justified. The best thing to do is just take a plethora of them and just come out with an average medium, and then you're in good shape. I have a major concern right now with the way the hemp program is being run in the state of Kentucky. Right now, there's 75,000 farms. Right now, only roughly 1,000 of those farms are raising hemp in the state. There are some people, based on connections, that were raising 10 to 15 acres are now raising 200 acres. And once again, we go back to who decides who gets to grow it and who decides how much. I can tell you right now, there are going to be winners and losers. And it's sad because I know for a fact there's going to be some people this year going to lose everything they've got. You have to understand the hemp program as it is right now in the state of Kentucky. This year they kind of opened up the doors. It's an election year. Why not? You know, they want the feeling that everything is great in that industry, and we're moving forward. What I'm being told by people who are raising it was that actually we were probably on the forefront when Jamie Comer was Commissioner of Agriculture. Now probably we're nowhere near there. And what I'm being told is that there's a lot of uncertainty right now with the market. Mm-hmm. Where are you going to sell it? Gen Cana right now is totally up in the air whether they're even going to be in existence. They've got people, they've shut down construction down in Mayfield, Kentucky. People are being told they now need to send stuff to Winchester, Kentucky. You know, there's a question in the markets. There's a question of, right now there's no insurance. There's no safety net. Most of the banks don't want to lend against it. To raise an acre of hemp right now, you know, you're looking between $3 to $6 a plant to plant it. So you're looking somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 an acre before there's a penny return. And the drought this year knocked a lot of people for a loop. I've seen some crops that are just in, you know, they're not going to have any. I feel sorry for them. They're going to lose. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. I mean, there are a lot of unanswered questions
with
the whole hemp product and the hemp economy. Are there other products, other agricultural crops that have some merit and some potential?
You know, I think hops do in Kentucky. You know, we have become, if you go anywhere further west than Elizabethtown now, you would think you're in Iowa, because you're looking at hundreds, if not thousands, of acres of corn and soybeans. I was down in McLean County not too long ago. A beautiful view up at one of their county parks, but as far as the eye could see, you saw nothing but corn. And they've replaced what we used to refer to as the old Pennyroyal, the old Savannah area, the grassland. And it's been replaced with corn. Now the problem with that this year is, who are you going to sell it to? The bins are full. I've seen where people have black-topped areas where the bins are. They got it piled up there, and then they got a crop in the field with no markets. A lot of people think that, you know, and I have basically stayed out of the tariff situation, because what can I say that's going to make anybody feel better? Nothing. I mean, but the truth of the matter is, China has found markets to purchase their needs. And even if we go back in and negotiate a trade agreement, we're going to have to be competitive with those other folks, which means probably we're going to have to drop our prices to be competitive. And people aren't talking about that. That's what the scary part. We very well may have volume, but you're not going to have the price structure to support it. Right now, in 2001, it cost $200 an acre to raise an acre of corn. This year, it costs $700 an acre to raise an acre of corn, and corn prices are lower now than they were then. So I asked one of the largest corn growers in the state of Kentucky, how can you make it? And he point blank looked at me and says, you can't. And I said, well, how are you doing it? He said, insurance. So to get back to your answer, there's one of the things that we are proposing, and I wish I had the plan with me and I don't, is we're totally looking to diversify. I think you're just going to have to, you know, get back into, you know, one of the things that Kentucky is very strong in is cattle beef production. We're #1 state east of the Mississippi. The problem in Kentucky is we have to send our cattle out to Nebraska and Kansas to finish them off. Well, one thing I know about Kentucky is we have plenty of corn. We have plenty of grain. Western Kentucky has tremendous water. We now have the transportation routes. We're centrally located in the United States to be a major player if we want feedlots, processing centers. I think those need to be recruited into Kentucky. Why send stuff 1,000 miles out and bring it back as a finished product when you could do it right here? And I truly think we can do it here in Kentucky. I think it needs to be an issue. I think it needs to be something. My dad told me, if anything's important enough, you'll find a way to get it done. I think that's important enough.
As if you're elected commissioner, what will you do to help those grain farmers who have corn already sitting in storage, corn in the fields, and soybeans even more dismal, as I understand, in terms of the market, and into the second or third year of this issue, and we can't solve the trade issue in the debate here, but but it is what it is, and it's a real issue for the farmers, not only in Kentucky, but throughout the nation.
We have grown too much. And to be very honest about it, I don't want to give a generic answer, but the answer to you, which I mean, is anything I can. Anything. I don't want to sit behind a desk. I don't want to be in Frankfurt. I want to get out in the field. I want to take people. There are people that are experts.
Are you willing to go to Washington as commissioner and
I'll do
engage
whatever it takes.
the federal policymakers to try to impact the policy-making process there as needed?
One thing that people that know me know about me is that I don't shy away from any fight. I don't mind tackling anything if it's the right thing to do. And I'm not one who wants to be judged by politics. I don't like politics. I will do what is necessary to fight for the Kentucky farmer. And if that means I have to get in my car, instead of flying, I'll drive to Washington, D.C. and go talk to whoever to get whatever needs to be done, because something has to be done. We need a paradigm shift, because what we're doing is no longer working. The definition of his insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Why would you expect us any different in agriculture? And right now we're doing the same thing over and over. We've allowed corporate agriculture to dictate the model for what it is we followed since the Nixon years. And that may work out in Illinois and Iowa, in the big states where you got 10,000 acre farms. But in places like Kentucky and Virginia and Tennessee and those states that have smaller farms, our average farm size in Kentucky, 143 acres. That's not going to work. So we must diversify. We must do all things.
This might be the final question given our time. Kentucky, even though the numbers were increasingly urbanized and more metropolitan population-wise, we're still generally one of the more rural states in the nation. And as one who's lived most of my life in rural Kentucky and been involved in economic development programs and so forth, and no darts being thrown by me toward the urban areas of the Golden Triangle, but the fact is they've done okay, generally speaking, in competitive over the last half century. Rural Kentucky is slipping further and further behind. We're down to under a minute. As commissioner, what would you do in general to promote economic development in general in rural Kentucky?
Everything, because literally, since I've been campaigning, I totally, at my own detriment, I have ignored Louisville, I've ignored Lexington, and I've ignored Northern Kentucky. I have spent most of my time in rural Kentucky because to me that represents Kentucky. My farm is in a little area that now has one service station, maybe 5 houses. I know what it's like. You're losing places that are still on the map that no longer exist. We must find a way to bring, and it's going to be in agriculture. It has to be in agriculture to get that back. I mean, that's what's out there. You're not going to get a big factory into a place that's got 200 people. But as we are growing as a state, and we now are up to 4 million people, those rural agricultural areas are going to become more and more important. I believe that with all my heart.
Ms. Conway, we're out of time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Busy schedule. God bless you.
You.
We wish you safe travels out on the campaign trail. This is John Chowning with Democratic nominee for Commissioner of Agriculture of Kentucky, thanking him for his time and thanking you, the voters and viewers, and urging you to vote, make informed decisions, and go to the polls on Tuesday, November 5th. Thank you.